What if I told you that the person mopping floors in your office building might be the only thing standing between your company and complete digital destruction? What if that quiet janitor pushing his cart down empty hallways at midnight holds knowledge that could save millions of dollars and thousands of jobs? This is the extraordinary true story of how one man's hidden talents emerged from the shadows when everything seemed lost, proving that brilliance doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the towering glass building of Meridian Technologies, casting harsh shadows across the polished marble floors that stretched endlessly through the corporate maze. It was well past midnight on a Tuesday in downtown Seattle, and the 42nd floor buzzed with an unusual energy for such a late hour. While most of the city slept, the cleaning crew moved methodically through the offices, their footsteps echoing in the silence that only skyscrapers know after dark. Marcus Thompson pushed his wheeled cart down the pristine hallway, the familiar squeak of its left wheel marking his progress like a metronome keeping time with his thoughts. At 34 years old, Marcus had been cleaning these same floors for nearly 3 years, arriving each night at 11 and finishing his rounds by 6 in the morning. His dark green uniform bore the logo of Elite Cleaning Services, and his name tag simply read Marcus in block letters that somehow made him feel smaller than he actually was. But Marcus carried more than cleaning supplies in his cart. Hidden beneath the industrial-strength disinfectants and paper towels was a worn laptop computer, its surface scratched from years of use, its keyboard worn smooth in places where his fingers had typed countless lines of code. This machine was his secret companion, his window into a world that most people in this building assumed he could never understand or access. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that he spent his nights in one of the most technologically advanced companies in the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by millions of dollars worth of cutting-edge equipment, quantum computers, and artificial intelligence systems, yet he remained invisible to the very people who created and operated this digital empire. They saw him as part of the furniture, a necessary but unremarkable presence who emptied their trash bins and wiped down their desks while they were safely tucked away in their suburban homes. What they didn't know was that Marcus Thompson possessed a mind that could navigate complex algorithms like a conductor leading a symphony orchestra. He had taught himself programming languages that many computer science graduates struggled to master, spending countless hours after his cleaning shifts hunched over his laptop in the employee break room, learning Python, JavaScript, C++, and assembly language through online tutorials and open-source documentation. His journey into the world of coding had begun not from ambition or career aspirations, but from desperation and love. 5 years earlier, when his daughter Emma was diagnosed with a rare neurological condition, Marcus had found himself drowning in medical bills and searching for any way to increase his income. He had stumbled across freelance programming websites where people posted small coding projects, and something about the logical structure of computer languages appealed to his methodical mind. Late nights turned into early mornings as Marcus taught himself to build websites, create mobile applications, and solve complex computational problems. He discovered that his brain, which had never been properly recognized or challenged in traditional academic settings, possessed an almost supernatural ability to see patterns in code, to identify inefficiencies in systems, and to create elegant solutions to seemingly impossible technical problems. But life had a way of keeping Marcus humble. Every month brought new medical expenses for Emma's treatment, therapy sessions, and specialized equipment. His ex-wife Sarah had left 2 years after Emma's diagnosis, unable to handle the stress and financial strain that came with caring for a special needs child. She had moved across the country with her new boyfriend, sending sporadic birthday cards and Christmas presents while Marcus carried the full weight of parenthood alone. So Marcus continued mopping floors and emptying trash cans, using his programming skills only for small freelance projects that he completed in the few hours between finishing his cleaning rounds and getting Emma ready for school. He told himself it was temporary, that someday he would find the courage or the opportunity to pursue programming as a real career, but years passed and he remained trapped in a cycle of survival that left little room for dreams. Emma was now 9 years old, a bright and curious girl whose physical limitations had never dimmed her enormous spirit. She attended a specialized school during the day while Marcus slept, and in the evenings they would sit together at their small kitchen table in their modest apartment, Emma working on her homework while Marcus tapped away on his laptop, debugging code or learning new programming concepts. "Daddy speaks to computers," Emma would tell her teachers and classmates when they asked what her father did for work. She didn't understand the complexities of his dual life, but she had observed enough to know that her father possessed some kind of magical ability to make machines do exactly what he wanted them to do. Marcus had never bothered correcting her innocent description because in many ways Emma had captured something profound about his relationship with technology. While other people seemed to fight with their computers, growing frustrated when programs crashed or systems failed to respond, Marcus approached every technical challenge like a conversation with an old friend. He could sense when something was wrong with a network, feel the rhythm of data flowing through servers, and intuitively understand the logic that governed complex software systems. On this particular Tuesday night, as Marcus pushed his cart past the executive offices on the 42nd floor, he noticed something unusual. The corner office belonging to Victoria Chen, the chief technology officer, still glowed with light, and he could see her silhouette paced frantically back and forth behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was highly unusual because Victoria, despite her reputation as a workaholic, typically left the office by 8 in the evening to spend time with her own family. Marcus had observed Victoria from a distance for months, watching her command meetings with confident gestures, seeing her name on technical documents that occasionally ended up in waste baskets, and overhearing fragments of conversations about artificial intelligence projects and cybersecurity initiatives that fascinated him more than he cared to admit. She represented everything that Marcus aspired to become professionally, a technical leader whose intelligence was recognized and rewarded in the corporate world that seemed so far removed from his own reality. As he approached Victoria's office to empty the trash bin just outside her door, Marcus could hear her voice rising in frustration as she spoke rapidly into her phone. Her normally composed demeanor had cracked, revealing the stress that came with bearing responsibility for the technological infrastructure of a company that employed over 15,000 people worldwide. "No, you don't understand," Victoria was saying into her phone, running her hands through her normally perfect black hair. "This isn't just a standard security breach. They've somehow gained administrative access to our core servers, and they're demanding $50 million or they'll release every piece of proprietary data we've developed over the past decade." Marcus froze, his hand halfway to the small waste basket beside Victoria's door. $50 million. The number hit him like a physical blow, not because of its size but because he immediately understood the implications. A ransomware attack of this magnitude would destroy Meridian Technologies, eliminate thousands of jobs, and potentially damage client companies that relied on Meridian's services for their own operations. The FBI is involved, but they're saying it could take weeks or months to trace the source. Victoria continued, her voice strained with exhaustion. "Our entire research and development division is locked out of their own systems. The hackers somehow got past every security protocol we had in place. It's like they knew exactly where our vulnerabilities were before they even started." Marcus pretended to focus on his cleaning duties while his mind raced through the technical possibilities. Ransomware attacks typically followed predictable patterns, but what Victoria was describing sounded far more sophisticated than the usual criminal operations that made headlines in technology news. The fact that the attackers had gained administrative access suggested either insider knowledge or an extremely advanced understanding of Meridian's specific network architecture. "I don't care what it costs," Victoria said into her phone, leaning against her desk with defeat written across her shoulders. "Hire every cybersecurity consultant in the country if you have to. We need to find a way to regain control of our systems without paying these criminals. The board is meeting tomorrow morning, and if we don't have a solution, they're going to start talking about shutting down entire divisions." As Marcus continued his cleaning routine, moving methodically through the hallway, while Victoria's crisis unfolded behind the glass walls of her office, he found himself analyzing the situation with the same systematic approach he applied to debugging complex code. Ransomware attacks succeeded because they exploited weaknesses that organizations didn't know existed, but every system had backdoors, forgotten maintenance protocols, and legacy connections that skilled programmers could potentially leverage to regain access. The challenge was that Meridian Technologies operated at a scale that Marcus had never encountered in his freelance work. Their network infrastructure included hundreds of servers, thousands of workstations, multiple data centers and connections to client systems around the world. The attackers had clearly done extensive reconnaissance before launching their assault, mapping out the company's digital architecture with surgical precision. But Marcus understood something about large-scale systems that many people overlooked. Despite their complexity, these networks were built on fundamental principles that remained consistent regardless of size. Every server ran on basic protocols, every database followed logical structures, and every security system operated according to rules that could be understood and potentially circumvented by someone who truly comprehended the underlying technology. Victoria ended her phone call and slumped into her chair, staring at the multiple computer monitors that displayed error messages and system alerts in ominous red text. Marcus could see her reflection in the window, and for the first time since he had been working in this building, Victoria Chen looked vulnerable and uncertain. Marcus finished cleaning the area around Victoria's office and continued his rounds, but his mind remained focused on the crisis unfolding just a few feet away from where he emptied trash bins and wiped down surfaces. He thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully in their small apartment, trusting that her father would always find a way to provide for her and protect her future. He thought about the thousands of Meridian employees who would arrive at work tomorrow morning, unaware that their livelihoods hung in the balance while cybercriminals held their company hostage. As Marcus pushed his cart toward the elevator bank, heading down to the 38th floor to continue his cleaning route, he made a decision that would change everything. Instead of simply observing this crisis from the shadows, instead of accepting his role as an invisible presence in a world that didn't recognize his capabilities, Marcus decided that tonight would be different. Tonight he would step out of the shadows and offer the one thing that might save Meridian Technologies from complete destruction: his knowledge, his skills, and his willingness to risk everything for the chance to prove that brilliance could emerge from the most unexpected places. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, carrying Marcus down through the floors of corporate hierarchy. But his mind was already racing upward, toward solutions and possibilities that existed in the digital realm where his true talents resided. He didn't yet know how he would approach Victoria Chen, how he would convince her to trust a janitor with access to her company's most critical systems, or whether his skills would be sufficient to combat the sophisticated attack that had brought Meridian to its knees. But Marcus Thompson, single father and midnight janitor, understood something that the attackers had probably never considered. Sometimes the most powerful response to a sophisticated assault comes not from expensive consultants or government agencies, but from someone who has spent years learning to solve impossible problems with limited resources, someone who understands that desperation can be transformed into determination when the stakes are high enough.
The real battle was about to begin, and Marcus was ready to prove that Daddy Speaks to Computers was not just a child's innocent observation, but a profound truth about the hidden potential that exists in every person who refuses to be defined by other people's expectations. The question was whether the corporate world was ready to listen to what he had to say. The elevator descended through the corporate tower with mechanical precision, but Marcus's pulse quickened with each passing floor. By the time he reached the 38th level, his decision had crystallized into something unshakable. He would not spend another night watching from the sidelines while people who barely acknowledged his existence faced a crisis that he might be able to solve. Marcus wheeled his cart out of the elevator and immediately changed direction, abandoning his usual cleaning route. Instead of heading toward the rows of cubicles and conference rooms that awaited his nightly attention, he pushed the cart into an empty supply closet, retrieved his worn laptop, and found a quiet corner near the emergency stairwell where he could work without interruption. The building's wireless network, which he had discreetly accessed months earlier using credentials he had observed being entered by careless employees, provided him with internet connectivity. Marcus opened his laptop and began his reconnaissance, starting with publicly available information about Meridian Technologies' digital infrastructure and working his way deeper into technical documentation that most people would find incomprehensibly complex. What Marcus discovered in the first 30 minutes of investigation both impressed and alarmed him. Meridian's network architecture was indeed sophisticated, built on enterprise-level security protocols and redundant systems designed to prevent exactly the kind of attack that was currently crippling the company. The hackers had clearly invested significant time and resources in mapping out vulnerabilities that shouldn't have existed in such a well-protected environment. But as Marcus dove deeper into system logs and network traffic patterns that he accessed through administrative backdoors he had identified during previous late-night exploration sessions, he began to see something that the company's own cybersecurity team had apparently missed. The attack wasn't entirely external. Someone with insider knowledge had provided the attackers with detailed information about Meridian's security architecture, including specific details about server configurations and authentication protocols that would have been nearly impossible for outsiders to discover independently. Marcus cross-referenced timestamps from the attack with employee access logs, analyzed patterns in network traffic leading up to the breach, and identified several anomalies that suggested the involvement of at least one person with legitimate administrative credentials. The sophistication of the attack made perfect sense once he understood that it combined external criminal expertise with internal system knowledge. Armed with this crucial insight, Marcus knew that conventional cybersecurity responses would be insufficient.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The attackers had anticipated standard defensive measures because they had inside information about how Meridian's security team would respond to different types of threats. But they probably hadn't anticipated intervention from someone who existed completely outside the formal IT structure, someone who could approach the problem from angles that wouldn't be considered by traditional cybersecurity professionals. Marcus spent the next 2 hours developing a preliminary strategy for regaining control of Meridian's compromised systems. His approach relied on legacy maintenance protocols that most companies neglected to secure properly, forgotten diagnostic tools that often remained active on enterprise networks, and creative exploitation of the very redundancy systems that the attackers had used to spread their malware throughout the company's infrastructure. The plan was risky, requiring Marcus to gain unauthorized access to core systems that he had no official permission to touch. If he was discovered, he would face immediate termination and potentially criminal charges for unauthorized computer access. But the alternative was watching Meridian Technologies collapse under the weight of a $50 million ransom demand, destroying the livelihoods of thousands of employees and their families. As dawn approached, Marcus realized that he could no longer work alone. His preliminary analysis had confirmed that the attack was more complex than initially understood, and neutralizing it would require access to administrative tools and system credentials that he couldn't obtain without help from someone inside the official IT structure. He needed to convince Victoria Chen to trust him with access to her company's most critical systems, despite the fact that she knew him only as the janitor who emptied trash bins outside her office. Marcus closed his laptop and returned it to his cleaning cart, then completed his remaining cleaning duties with mechanical efficiency, while his mind raced through different approaches for initiating contact with Victoria. He couldn't simply knock on her office door and announce that the janitor had a solution to her cybersecurity crisis. Such an approach would likely result in security being called and Marcus being escorted from the building permanently. Instead, Marcus decided on a more subtle strategy that would demonstrate his technical knowledge before revealing his identity. He would leave Victoria a detailed technical analysis of the attack, including information that her own cybersecurity team had overlooked, along with the beginning of a solution that could only be completed with her cooperation and administrative access. Marcus spent his final hour in the building that night crafting a comprehensive document that outlined his findings about the insider involvement in the attack, detailed the vulnerabilities that had been exploited, and presented a step-by-step plan for regaining control of Meridian's systems without paying the ransom. He printed the document using a network printer in an empty office, then returned to Victoria's floor just before 6 in the morning. Victoria was still in her office, now surrounded by empty coffee cups and the debris of an all-night crisis management session. She had been joined by 3 other executives and what appeared to be an FBI agent, all of them looking exhausted and increasingly desperate as the sunrise brought them closer to the board meeting that would determine Meridian's fate. Marcus cleaned the hallway outside Victoria's office with deliberate slowness, listening to fragments of conversation that confirmed his analysis of the situation. The company's cybersecurity consultants had made no meaningful progress in penetrating the attackers' defenses. The FBI was pursuing investigative leads that would take weeks to develop into actionable intelligence, and the board of directors was preparing to authorize payment of the ransom rather than risk complete destruction of the company's intellectual property. When Victoria briefly left her office to use the restroom, Marcus seized the opportunity to place his document on her desk, positioned where she would see it immediately upon her return. He included a simple note that read, "Miss Chen, I believe I can help you regain control of your systems without paying the ransom. The person who prepared this analysis will be available in the employee break room on the 15th floor if you decide that unconventional solutions are worth considering. Time is running out." Marcus then completed his cleaning duties and officially ended his shift, but instead of going home to his apartment where Emma was still sleeping, he rode the elevator down to the 15th floor and settled into the employee break room with his laptop and a cup of coffee from the vending machine. If Victoria read his document and decided to investigate further, she would find him waiting. If she dismissed his analysis as the work of some delusional custodial employee, Marcus would know that he had at least tried to help. 40 minutes later, Victoria Chen walked into the employee break room carrying Marcus's document in one hand and a look of intense curiosity on her face. She had clearly read the technical analysis carefully because her expression combined surprise, skepticism, and the desperate hope of someone who had exhausted conventional options. Victoria looked around the nearly empty break room until her eyes settled on Marcus, who was sitting at a small table in the corner with his laptop open in front of him. Recognition flickered across her face as she realized that the person she was looking for was the same janitor she had seen countless times over the past 3 years, always working quietly in the background while she focused on her executive responsibilities. "You're the person who wrote this analysis," Victoria said, approaching Marcus's table with cautious steps. Her voice carried a mixture of disbelief and professional interest as she processed the incongruity of finding sophisticated cybersecurity expertise in someone she had never considered as anything more than part of the building's maintenance staff. Marcus stood up respectfully, suddenly aware that his green cleaning uniform made him look completely out of place in a conversation about advanced network security and corporate crisis management.
But he met Victoria's gaze steadily, drawing confidence from years of late-night programming sessions and the knowledge that his technical analysis was sound regardless of his job title or educational credentials. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied simply. "My name is Marcus Thompson. I've been working the night cleaning shift in this building for almost 3 years, but I also have extensive experience with network security and systems programming. I believe your company is facing an attack that combines external hackers with insider knowledge, and I think I know how to neutralize the threat without paying the ransom." Victoria sat down across from Marcus, placing his document on the table between them. She studied his face with the intensity of someone trying to reconcile what she was hearing with what she thought she knew about the world. In her experience, cybersecurity expertise came from people with computer science degrees, professional certifications, and years of experience at established technology companies. She had never encountered a janitor who could produce the kind of sophisticated technical analysis that was now spread out on the break room table. "This document," Victoria said, tapping the printed pages with her finger, "demonstrates a level of understanding about our network architecture that should be impossible for someone without administrative access to our systems. You've identified vulnerabilities that our own security team missed, and you've correctly analyzed attack vectors that our FBI consultant said would take weeks to trace. How is that possible?" Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his answer would determine whether Victoria would give him the chance to prove his capabilities, or whether she would conclude that he had somehow gained unauthorized access to company systems and report him to security. The next few minutes would either open the door to the most important opportunity of his professional life, or result in his immediate termination and possible criminal prosecution. "I've been teaching myself programming and cybersecurity for the past 5 years, Marcus explained, keeping his voice calm and professional despite the magnitude of what was at stake. "I started with small freelance projects, but I've always been fascinated by large-scale systems and security challenges. Working in this building has given me opportunities to observe your technology infrastructure, and I've spent countless hours studying enterprise-level networks and security protocols on my own time." Marcus paused, then decided to be completely honest about the full extent of his unofficial access to Meridian's systems. "I have gained some access to your network over the past few months, but only to learn and never to cause any damage or steal information. I understand that this puts me in a difficult position legally, but I also understand that your company is facing destruction, and I have knowledge that might prevent that outcome." Victoria leaned back in her chair, processing the implications of what Marcus had just told her. Under normal circumstances, she would have been obligated to report unauthorized network access to both company security and law enforcement. But these were not normal circumstances. Her company was facing a $50 million ransom demand, her board of directors was preparing to authorize payment to criminals, and her own cybersecurity team had been unable to develop any viable alternatives. "Show me," Victoria said finally. "If you really understand our systems well enough to counter this attack, prove it. But understand that if you're wrong, if this is some kind of elaborate deception, there will be serious consequences." Marcus opened his laptop and began demonstrating his understanding of Meridian's network architecture, walking Victoria through the attack vectors that the hackers had used and explaining how his proposed counter-strategy would exploit the same redundancy systems to regain administrative control. He showed her diagnostic tools that could bypass the attacker's encryption, legacy maintenance protocols that could restore access to critical databases, and monitoring systems that could track the attacker's activities in real time. As Marcus talked, Victoria found herself increasingly impressed not just by his technical knowledge, but by his methodical approach to problem-solving and his deep understanding of the strategic implications of different cybersecurity decisions. He thought like a systems architect, considering not just immediate technical solutions but long-term consequences for network stability and future security improvements. "Your analysis of the insider involvement is particularly concerning," Victoria said, studying the documentation that Marcus had prepared. You're suggesting that someone with administrative credentials provided the attackers with detailed information about our security protocols. Do you have any indication of who that might be? Marcus pulled up a series of log files and network traffic analyses on his laptop screen. Based on access patterns and timing correlations, I believe the insider access came from someone in your IT security division, possibly someone with administrative privileges, who could observe and document your defensive capabilities without triggering alerts. The attackers knew exactly when your monitoring systems would be offline for routine maintenance, and they exploited backup protocols that aren't documented in any public materials. Victoria felt a chill as she realized the implications of Marcus's analysis. If he was correct, then Meridian's cybersecurity crisis was not just a matter of external criminals exploiting technical vulnerabilities. Someone inside the company, someone who had been trusted with protecting the organization's digital infrastructure, had betrayed that trust and collaborated with criminals to steal $50 million and destroy the company's reputation. We need to implement your counter-strategy immediately, Victoria said, making a decision that went against every protocol and policy that governed her position as Chief Technology Officer. But I can't authorize giving system access to someone who isn't an official employee of our IT division. If something goes wrong, if we cause additional damage to our network while trying to counter the attack, the liability issues would be enormous. Marcus nodded, understanding Victoria's position completely. I have a proposal that might address your concerns, he said. Make me a temporary consultant. Give me an official status that provides legal cover for accessing your systems, and let me work alongside your existing cybersecurity team. I'm not asking to work alone or without oversight. I just need the tools and access necessary to implement the solution I've developed. Victoria considered this suggestion, weighing the risks of trusting an untested janitor against the certainty of devastating consequences if no solution was found. The board meeting was scheduled to begin in less than 4 hours, and she needed to present her directors with viable alternatives to paying the ransom demand. I'll need to make some calls, Victoria said, standing up from the break room table. If I can get approval for bringing you on as an emergency consultant, are you prepared to start working immediately? Marcus closed his laptop and looked directly into Victoria's eyes. Miss Chen, I've been preparing for this opportunity my entire adult life. I know that sounds dramatic, but I've spent thousands of hours learning these skills while working overnight shifts and raising my daughter alone. If you give me the chance, I will not let you down. Victoria extended her hand toward Marcus, and he shook it firmly, both of them understanding that this handshake represented far more than a simple business agreement. It was a moment of mutual trust between two people from completely different worlds, united by a crisis that required them to look beyond conventional expectations and social boundaries.
Give me 30 minutes to work out the administrative details, Victoria said. Then we'll see if a janitor really can save a $50 million company from cyber criminals. As Victoria left the break room to make her calls, Marcus remained seated at the small table, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. In the span of a single night, he had gone from being an invisible maintenance worker to being Meridian Technologies' best hope for surviving a sophisticated cyber attack. The transition felt surreal, but Marcus understood that this was the moment he had been unconsciously preparing for during all those late nights spent learning programming languages and studying network security protocols. 25 minutes later, Victoria returned to the break room with a temporary employment contract, a security badge that would give Marcus access to Meridian's IT operations center, and a look of determination that indicated she had successfully convinced her superiors to authorize the most unconventional cybersecurity response in the company's history. "Welcome to Meridian Technologies, Mr. Thompson," Victoria said, handing Marcus his new credentials. "You now have 48 hours to prove that brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places. Let's go save our company." Marcus clipped the temporary security badge to his cleaning uniform, creating a visual contradiction that perfectly captured the surreal nature of his transformation from janitor to cybersecurity consultant. As he followed Victoria toward the elevator that would carry them up to the executive floors, where the real battle against the attackers would unfold, Marcus thought about Emma, who would wake up in a few hours expecting to find her father sleeping after another routine night of cleaning office buildings. Tonight, however, had been anything but routine, and by the time Emma returned home from school that afternoon, Marcus hoped to have proven that Daddy Speaks to Computers was not just a child's innocent observation, but an accurate description of abilities that could change their lives forever. The elevator doors opened, revealing the path toward either vindication or devastating failure. Marcus stepped inside, carrying with him the hopes of 15,000 employees, the desperate trust of executives who had exhausted conventional solutions, and the weight of proving that talent and determination could overcome any barrier that society might construct. The real test was about to begin. The 45th floor of Meridian Technologies buzzed with an intensity that Marcus had never experienced during his years of cleaning these same spaces in the quiet hours after midnight. Banks of monitors displayed scrolling code, network diagrams and real-time system alerts in colors that painted the room in an urgent glow of red warnings and amber cautions. The IT operations center resembled a military command post more than a corporate office, with workstations arranged in a semicircle around massive displays that showed the current state of Meridian's digital infrastructure. Victoria led Marcus through the controlled chaos of the operations center, past cybersecurity specialists who looked up from their terminals with expressions of exhaustion and barely controlled panic. These were some of the most talented technical professionals in Seattle, individuals with advanced degrees and prestigious certifications, yet they had been unable to make meaningful progress against the sophisticated attack that continued to tighten its grip on the company's systems. "Team, this is Marcus Thompson," Victoria announced to the assembled group of IT professionals. "He'll be working with us as an emergency consultant to develop alternative approaches to our current situation." She deliberately avoided mentioning Marcus's background as a janitor, understanding that such information would immediately undermine his credibility with a team already skeptical of unconventional solutions. The lead cybersecurity analyst, a woman named Dr. Rebecca Martinez with silver-rimmed glasses and 20 years of experience in corporate security, looked up from her workstation with undisguised irritation. "Victoria, we've already consulted with the best firms in the country. The FBI's cybercrime unit is involved. What exactly can one more consultant offer that we haven't already considered?" Marcus stepped forward, his cleaning uniform creating a stark contrast with the business attire worn by everyone else in the room. "Dr. Martinez, I've spent the past several hours analyzing the attack vectors and system logs. I believe the hackers have insider assistance, and I think I've identified vulnerabilities in their approach that can be exploited to regain administrative control without paying the ransom." Rebecca's eyebrows rose skeptically as she processed Marcus's statement. "Insider assistance? That's a serious accusation that would require substantial evidence. And if you're suggesting that there are vulnerabilities in an attack that has completely bypassed our security protocols, I'd like to see your supporting data." Marcus approached Rebecca's workstation and gestured toward her monitors. "May I?" When she nodded, he began pulling up system logs and network traffic analyses that he had prepared during his early morning reconnaissance. "Look at these timestamps. The attackers initiated their primary assault at exactly 11:47 p.m. on Monday night, which corresponds precisely with the scheduled maintenance window for your intrusion detection systems. That timing couldn't be coincidental." Rebecca leaned forward, studying the data that Marcus was displaying. Despite her initial skepticism, she was a scientist at heart, and the evidence he was presenting deserved serious consideration regardless of its source. "That's interesting, but maintenance schedules are known to multiple people across our organization. It doesn't necessarily indicate insider involvement." "True," Marcus agreed, "but look at this sequence of events." He highlighted a series of network access logs that showed unusual patterns in the hours leading up to the attack. Someone with administrative credentials accessed your backup authentication servers approximately 18 hours before the attack began. Those servers contain encrypted copies of all user permissions and security protocols. The attackers would have needed that information to map out their assault strategy.
Dr. Martinez called over 2 other cybersecurity specialists, and they began examining Marcus's analysis with increasing interest. The data he was presenting painted a picture of systematic preparation that their own investigation had missed, partly because they had been focused on external threats rather than the possibility of internal betrayal. "This is sophisticated analysis," admitted James Park, a network security engineer who had been working on the crisis since Tuesday morning. "But even if you're correct about insider involvement, we still need a way to regain control of our systems. The attackers have changed all administrative passwords, locked out our backup access protocols, and encrypted critical databases with military-grade algorithms that could take years to break." Marcus nodded, understanding James's frustration completely. "That's exactly why conventional approaches haven't worked. The attackers anticipated every standard response because they had inside knowledge of your security procedures. But they probably didn't anticipate intervention from someone operating outside your formal IT structure, someone who could approach the problem from completely different angles." Marcus moved to an unoccupied workstation and began demonstrating the counter-strategy he had developed during his hours of preparation. Every enterprise network, no matter how sophisticated, relies on legacy protocols for hardware diagnostics and emergency maintenance. These protocols often run on separate channels that aren't fully integrated with modern security systems. The attackers focused on compromising your primary infrastructure, but they may have overlooked some of these older pathways. Victoria watched as Marcus's fingers moved across the keyboard with fluid precision, navigating through system architectures that she herself barely understood despite her executive position in technology leadership. There was something almost musical about the way he interacted with the computer systems, as if he was conducting a complex symphony rather than simply entering commands and analyzing data. "Here's what I'm proposing," Marcus continued, his voice gaining confidence as he demonstrated his technical approach. "We use these legacy diagnostic protocols to establish a secondary command structure that runs parallel to your primary network. Once we have that foundation, we can begin selectively restoring access to critical systems while simultaneously tracking the attacker's activities and identifying their control mechanisms." Dr. Martinez studied Marcus's approach with growing fascination. "This is incredibly risky. If we make mistakes while implementing your strategy, we could cause additional damage to systems that are currently just locked rather than destroyed. The board of directors would hold us personally responsible for any escalation of the crisis." "Dr. Martinez is right about the risks," Victoria interjected, "but we're running out of alternatives. The board meeting starts in 90 minutes, and if we don't present a viable solution, they're going to authorize payment of the ransom. That means the attackers win, our proprietary technology gets stolen, and we spend the next several years trying to rebuild trust with clients who will question our ability to protect their data." Marcus understood the weight of responsibility that was settling on his shoulders. 15,000 jobs, millions of dollars in client relationships, and the survival of one of Seattle's most successful technology companies now depended on theories and strategies that he had developed while sitting alone in an employee break room with a laptop that was older than some of the software systems he was proposing to hack. "I need complete access to your network diagnostic tools and temporary administrative privileges," Marcus said, addressing Victoria directly. "I also need your team to trust me enough to follow instructions that might seem counterintuitive. This approach only works if we can coordinate our efforts precisely and avoid triggering additional security responses that the attackers might have installed as traps." Victoria looked around the operations center at her exhausted team of cybersecurity professionals. These were people she had hired personally, individuals whose expertise she trusted completely under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances, and conventional expertise had proven insufficient to address the sophisticated threat that was destroying her company. "We're going to try Marcus's approach," Victoria announced to the assembled team. "I'm giving him full administrative access and temporary authority over our counter-operation. I understand the risks, but I also understand that paying $50 million to criminals is not an acceptable outcome for this company. Dr. Martinez removed her glasses and rubbed her tired eyes before responding. If we're really going to attempt this, we need to work quickly and document everything we do. If Marcus's strategy fails, we'll need a complete record of our actions to explain to the board and potentially to law enforcement. Marcus appreciated Rebecca's professional caution, but he also sensed the underlying skepticism that still colored her attitude toward his involvement in the crisis. He understood that his background as a janitor made him an unlikely candidate for leading a complex cybersecurity operation, but he also knew that his unconventional perspective might be exactly what was needed to counter an attack that had defeated conventional approaches.
Dr. Martinez, I want you to monitor every step of my process, Marcus said, extending an olive branch to the experienced security analyst. Challenge any decision that doesn't make sense to you, and stop me immediately if you see anything that could cause additional damage to the network. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to evaluate my methods based on their technical merit. Rebecca nodded, appreciating Marcus's willingness to submit to oversight from someone with formal credentials and established expertise. Fair enough. But understand that I'll be watching everything you do with extreme skepticism. This company's survival depends on our ability to resolve this crisis without making things worse. Marcus began implementing his counter-strategy, starting with the most delicate phase of establishing alternative access to Meridian's network infrastructure. He connected to legacy diagnostic protocols that had been installed years earlier for hardware maintenance and troubleshooting, systems that operated on separate communication channels from the primary network that the attackers had compromised. As Marcus worked, his approach became clear to the observing cybersecurity team. Rather than attempting to directly challenge the attackers' control over Meridian's main systems, he was building a parallel infrastructure that could operate independently while gradually expanding its reach into critical areas of the network. It was like constructing a secret tunnel system underneath a besieged fortress, creating pathways that the enemy didn't know existed. "This is actually brilliant," James Park admitted after watching Marcus work for 30 minutes. "You're essentially creating a shadow network that mirrors our primary infrastructure, but operates outside the security protocols that the attackers compromised. Once you have sufficient coverage, you can begin selectively isolating their malware and restoring our administrative control." Marcus nodded while continuing to type commands that established connections to servers and databases throughout Meridian's network. "The key is patience and precision. If we move too quickly or trigger any of the monitoring systems that the attackers installed, they could respond by destroying data or escalating their encryption protocols. We have to outmaneuver them systematically, one system at a time." Dr. Martinez leaned over Marcus's shoulder, studying the code he was writing in real time. Despite her initial skepticism, she found herself impressed by the elegance and sophistication of his approach. "Where did you learn to think like this?" "This kind of creative problem-solving usually comes from years of experience with high-stakes cybersecurity operations." Marcus paused in his typing, considering how to answer Rebecca's question honestly, without revealing details that might undermine his credibility. "I've been studying network security and systems programming for several years, but most of my experience comes from working alone on complex problems with limited resources. When you don't have access to expensive tools and established protocols, you learn to find creative solutions using whatever is available." Victoria watched this exchange with fascination, recognizing that Marcus was describing the exact kind of innovative thinking that large corporations often struggle to cultivate among their employees. The bureaucratic structures and risk-averse cultures that characterize successful businesses could sometimes inhibit the creative problem-solving that was necessary for addressing unprecedented challenges. As Marcus continued building his parallel network infrastructure, alarms began sounding from multiple workstations around the operations center.
The attackers had apparently detected some unusual activity on Meridian systems and were responding by escalating their assault, attempting to destroy additional databases before their victims could mount an effective counter-operation. "They know we're doing something," announced Sarah Kim, a systems administrator who was monitoring the attackers' activities. "They're accelerating their encryption protocols and attempting to access servers that they previously left untouched. If they succeed in encrypting our client databases, the damage could extend far beyond our own company." Marcus felt adrenaline surge through his system as he realized that his window of opportunity was rapidly closing. The attackers were responding more quickly than he had anticipated, forcing him to accelerate his own timeline while maintaining the precision necessary to avoid triggering additional defensive measures. "I need everyone to focus on defensive monitoring," Marcus said, his voice remaining calm despite the escalating pressure. "Watch for any changes in the attackers' behavior patterns and alert me immediately if they attempt to access any systems that we haven't secured yet. I'm going to expedite the restoration process, but that means taking risks that could backfire if we're not careful." The operations center transformed into a high-stakes coordination effort, with experienced cybersecurity professionals working under the direction of a janitor whose unconventional expertise had become their only hope for preventing catastrophic damage to their company and its clients. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone present, but the crisis had moved beyond concerns about conventional hierarchies and professional protocols. Marcus dove deeper into Meridian's network infrastructure, using his parallel access channels to begin systematically isolating the attacker's malware and restoring administrative control to critical systems. Each successful restoration brought them closer to regaining full control of the network, but it also increased the risk that the attackers would respond with devastating escalation. "I've restored access to the primary email servers," Marcus announced after 45 minutes of intense concentration. "Dr. Martinez, can you verify that our communication systems are functioning normally?" Rebecca ran diagnostic tests on the restored email infrastructure, confirming that Marcus had successfully removed the attacker's encryption without causing any data loss or system instability. "Email systems are fully operational. This is the first major victory we've achieved since the attack began." Encouraged by this success, Marcus accelerated his efforts to restore access to other critical systems, including the customer relationship databases that contain sensitive information about Meridian's clients worldwide. The attackers responded by attempting to destroy backup files and override security protocols that protected the company's most valuable intellectual property. "They're getting desperate," observed James Park as he monitored the attackers' increasingly frantic activities. "They know we're gaining ground, and they're trying to cause as much damage as possible before we can lock them out completely." Marcus understood that he was engaged in a digital chess match with opponents who possessed sophisticated skills and insider knowledge of Meridian's systems. Every move he made was countered by escalating responses from the attackers, creating a dynamic situation that required constant adaptation and split-second decision-making. "I'm going to attempt a coordinated restoration of the core business systems," Marcus announced to the assembled team. "This is the most dangerous phase of the operation, because if the attackers detect what we're doing before we complete the process, they could destroy everything we've worked to protect." Victoria looked around the operations center at her exhausted team of cybersecurity professionals, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. A janitor with no formal credentials was leading a complex technical operation that had defeated some of the most experienced cybersecurity experts in the country. The success or failure of the next 30 minutes would determine whether Meridian Technologies survived as a viable company. "Everyone ready?" Marcus asked, his hands poised over the keyboard as he prepared to execute the most critical phase of his counter-strategy. The team members nodded their confirmation, understanding that they were about to find out whether unconventional brilliance could triumph over sophisticated criminal expertise. Marcus began typing commands that would either restore Meridian's control over its own systems or trigger catastrophic retaliation from attackers who had already proven their willingness to destroy rather than surrender. As Marcus worked, the operations center fell silent, except for the humming of servers and the rapid clicking of keyboard keys. Everyone present understood that they were witnessing a moment that would define not just the survival of their company, but the vindication of talent and determination over conventional expectations and social barriers. The next few minutes would reveal whether Daddy Speaks to Computers was truly an accurate description of abilities that could change everything, or simply the innocent observation of a child who didn't understand the limitations that the adult world imposed on dreams and possibilities. Marcus Thompson, single father and overnight janitor, was about to discover which version of reality would prevail when everything was on the line. The countdown timer on the main display showed 17 minutes until the board of directors meeting would begin, but Marcus had entered a state of deep concentration where time seemed to move differently. His fingers danced across the keyboard with fluid precision, executing commands that sent ripples of change throughout Meridian's compromised network infrastructure. Each keystroke represented a calculated move in a digital chess match where the stakes couldn't be higher. The attackers had begun responding to Marcus's infiltration attempts with increasingly sophisticated countermeasures. They deployed adaptive malware that attempted to track his parallel access channels, launched denial-of-service attacks against the diagnostic protocols he was using, and initiated rapid encryption sequences designed to destroy data faster than he could restore it. What had begun as a methodical restoration process had evolved into a frantic race between creation and destruction. System alert on server cluster 7, announced Sarah Kim, her voice tight with tension as she monitored the attackers' activities. They're attempting to overwrite the customer database backups. If they succeed, we'll lose 3 years of client relationship data, even if we regain control of the primary systems. Marcus immediately shifted his focus to protecting the threatened servers, using his parallel network access to establish protective barriers around the customer databases, while simultaneously continuing his restoration efforts on other critical systems. The multitasking required him to maintain awareness of dozens of simultaneous processes, each one representing a potential point of failure that could cascade into total system collapse. Dr. Rebecca Martinez watched Marcus work with a mixture of professional admiration and personal bewilderment. In her 20 years of cybersecurity experience, she had never seen anyone navigate complex network architectures with such intuitive understanding. Marcus seemed to anticipate system responses before they occurred, to sense vulnerabilities in the attackers' strategies that weren't apparent in the raw data scrolling across their monitoring screens. "How are you tracking all of these simultaneous processes?" Rebecca asked, genuinely curious about Marcus's methodology. Most cybersecurity operations require teams of specialists working in coordination. You're managing system restoration, attack mitigation, and strategic planning simultaneously. Marcus didn't look away from his screen as he responded, his concentration absolute despite the conversation happening around him. When you're working alone on complex problems for years, you develop mental frameworks for managing multiple variables simultaneously. Every freelance programming project taught me to think in terms of interconnected systems rather than isolated tasks. Victoria Chen stood behind the assembled team, watching Marcus orchestrate the most important technical operation in Meridian's corporate history, while wearing a cleaning uniform that still carried the faint scent of industrial disinfectant. The visual contradiction between his appearance and his capabilities had become a powerful symbol of everything she thought she understood about talent, expertise, and professional hierarchies. Status report, Victoria requested, needing to understand their progress before facing the board of directors who would demand concrete answers about the company's crisis. James Park consulted the monitoring displays that tracked Marcus's restoration efforts across Meridian's network infrastructure. We've regained administrative control of approximately 60% of our core systems. Email servers are fully operational, customer databases are protected, and primary business applications are coming back online systematically.
The attackers are still fighting for control of our research and development servers, but their position is weakening. Marcus suddenly stopped typing and leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from concentration to concern as he analyzed data patterns that had just appeared on his screen. We have a problem. The attackers aren't just trying to maintain control of our systems, they're preparing to execute a scorched earth strategy that would destroy everything they can't keep. The operations center fell silent as everyone processed the implications of Marcus's observation. A scorched earth approach would mean that the attackers, recognizing their impending defeat, would attempt to cause maximum damage to Meridian's digital infrastructure before being expelled from the network. Such a strategy could destroy years of research, eliminate client data, and cripple the company even if they successfully regained control of their systems. Can you prevent them from executing that strategy? Victoria asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what Marcus was describing. Marcus studied the attack patterns more closely, identifying the specific systems that the attackers were targeting for destruction and analyzing the timeline they appeared to be following. I think so, but it requires a completely different approach than what we've been doing. Instead of gradually restoring our systems while they maintain control of others, I need to launch a coordinated assault that removes them from all critical systems simultaneously. Dr. Martinez understood the technical implications of what Marcus was proposing. That's incredibly risky. If your coordinated assault fails, if they detect what you're attempting before you complete the process, they could trigger immediate destruction of everything we've worked to protect. We'd go from partial recovery to total loss in a matter of minutes. Marcus nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the decision he was asking Victoria to authorize. Dr. Martinez is absolutely right about the risks, but if we continue with gradual restoration while they prepare their scorched earth strategy, we'll lose everything anyway. Sometimes you have to risk everything to save anything. Victoria looked around the operations center at her team of exhausted cybersecurity professionals, recognizing that she was facing the most important decision of her executive career. The board of directors expected her to present them with solutions, but the solution Marcus was proposing carried risks that could destroy the company more completely than the original attack. How confident are you in this approach? Victoria asked Marcus directly, needing to understand not just the technical possibilities, but his personal assessment of their chances for success. Marcus met Victoria's gaze with steady conviction, drawing on years of late-night programming sessions where he had learned to trust his instincts about complex technical problems. I'm confident in my understanding of their attack architecture and our network vulnerabilities. I'm confident in the technical approach I've developed for simultaneous system restoration. What I can't predict is whether they have additional capabilities that we haven't discovered yet. Victoria appreciated Marcus's honesty about the uncertainties they faced. In her experience, the most dangerous technical decisions were those made by people who claimed absolute confidence in situations that contained inherent unpredictability. Marcus's willingness to acknowledge limitations while still recommending bold action demonstrated the kind of balanced judgment that effective leadership required. Do it, Victoria decided. Launch your coordinated assault. We'll either succeed completely or fail completely, but we won't lose slowly while criminals destroy our company piece by piece. Marcus began preparing for the most complex and risky phase of his counter-operation, developing a sequence of commands that would target every system where the attackers maintained control, while simultaneously restoring Meridian's administrative access across their entire network infrastructure. The operation required precise timing, flawless execution, and a degree of luck that no amount of technical skill could guarantee. I need everyone to monitor specific aspects of the operation, Marcus said, distributing responsibilities among the cybersecurity team members. Dr.
Martinez, watch for any changes in the attacker's behavior patterns that might indicate they've detected our preparations. James, monitor system stability indicators and alert me immediately if any of our restoration attempts trigger cascading failures. Sarah, track data integrity across all databases to ensure we're not losing information during the transition process. The team members took their positions around the operations center, transforming the space into a coordinated command structure where experienced professionals worked under the direction of someone they had never heard of 24 hours earlier. The crisis had dissolved conventional hierarchies and professional boundaries, creating a meritocracy based purely on the ability to solve the impossible problem that threatened their collective survival. Marcus initiated the coordinated assault with a series of commands that targeted the attacker's control mechanisms across dozens of servers simultaneously. The operation unfolded like a precisely choreographed dance, with each system restoration triggering cascading changes throughout the network architecture. Success in one area enabled progress in others, while failure at any point could undermine the entire strategy. "They've detected our operation," Dr. Martinez announced as her monitoring systems registered sudden changes in the attacker's activities. "They're accelerating their destruction protocols and attempting to trigger immediate data deletion across multiple systems." Marcus had anticipated this response and was ready with countermeasures that isolated critical databases, while his restoration processes continued to expand their control over Meridian's network infrastructure. The digital battle had become a race between creation and destruction, with both sides operating at maximum capacity to achieve their objectives before their opponents could prevent them. "System restoration at 75%, James reported, his voice carrying cautious optimism as Marcus's strategy continued to succeed despite the attacker's increasingly desperate responses. "We've regained control of research and development servers, financial systems, and client communication platforms. The attackers are being systematically expelled from our network." Marcus remained focused on his screen, where lines of code scrolled past at a rate that made following individual commands impossible for anyone not intimately familiar with the systems being modified. He was operating at the limits of his capabilities, drawing on every technique he had learned during years of solitary study and applying them to the most complex technical challenge he had ever encountered. Warning signals from the core database servers, Sarah called out, her monitoring systems detecting attempts by the attackers to execute their scorched earth protocols before being completely removed from Meridian's network. "They're trying to destroy our primary intellectual property repositories before we can lock them out." Marcus immediately shifted his attention to protecting the threatened databases, using administrative privileges that he had restored to establish multiple layers of security around Meridian's most valuable digital assets. The attackers responded by attempting to overload the servers with processing requests designed to cause system crashes that would provide cover for data destruction. "System restoration at 85%, James updated, his voice gaining confidence as Marcus's operation continued to succeed despite the attackers' final desperate measures. "We've successfully expelled them from all customer-facing systems and most internal infrastructure. They're maintaining control of only a few isolated servers that contain non-critical data." Victoria watched the final phase of Marcus's operation unfold with a mixture of relief and amazement. The impossible was becoming reality as a janitor with no formal credentials systematically defeated sophisticated criminals who had brought her company to the brink of destruction. The board meeting would begin in 7 minutes, but she now had something to report that would exceed their most optimistic expectations. "Final system restoration in progress," Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the exhaustion that was beginning to show in his posture after hours of intense concentration. "The attackers have been expelled from all critical systems, their malware has been isolated and neutralized, and full administrative control has been restored to Meridian Technologies." The operations center erupted in subdued celebration as cybersecurity professionals, who had worked around the clock for 2 days, finally achieved the victory that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. Dr. Martinez stood and applauded, followed by James, Sarah, and the other team members who had witnessed Marcus transform from an unknown janitor into the architect of their salvation. System integrity checks confirmed complete restoration, James reported, running comprehensive diagnostics to verify that Meridian's network infrastructure had been returned to normal operation without any data loss or ongoing security vulnerabilities. All customer databases are intact, research and development servers are fully operational, and we've identified and eliminated every trace of the attacker's presence in our systems. Marcus finally leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a moment of relief as the reality of their success began to sink in. He had spent the past 8 hours proving that unconventional expertise could triumph over sophisticated criminal operations, that determination and creativity could overcome seemingly insurmountable technical challenges, and that brilliance could emerge from the most unexpected places. Victoria approached Marcus's workstation with a document folder in her hand and an expression that combined gratitude, admiration, and the recognition that she was about to change someone's life forever. Mr. Thompson, thanks to your intervention, Meridian Technologies has not only survived this crisis, but has also demonstrated resilience and innovation that will strengthen our position in the technology industry. Marcus stood up from his workstation, suddenly aware again of his cleaning uniform and the surreal nature of his transformation from invisible maintenance worker to cybersecurity hero. Miss Chen, I'm just grateful that I was able to help. This company employs thousands of people, and knowing that their jobs are secure makes everything worthwhile. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, extending her hand toward Marcus with a smile that acknowledged both his technical achievement and her own evolution from skepticism to admiration. Marcus, I owe you an apology for doubting your capabilities. What you accomplished today represents some of the most sophisticated cybersecurity work I've ever witnessed. You saved our company and taught us all something important about recognizing talent wherever it appears. Marcus shook Rebecca's hand, appreciating her professional grace in acknowledging the success of someone whose background challenged everything she thought she knew about expertise and credentials. Dr. Martinez, your oversight and guidance were essential to the operation's success. I couldn't have accomplished any of this without working alongside experienced professionals like yourself. Victoria opened the document folder she had been carrying and removed several official papers that bore the letterhead of Meridian Technologies' executive offices. Marcus, the board of directors has asked me to make you an offer that reflects both our gratitude for your service during this crisis and our recognition of your extraordinary capabilities. Marcus looked at the documents Victoria was presenting, struggling to process the magnitude of what appeared to be happening. After years of invisible labor, after countless nights spent learning programming skills while caring for Emma and dreaming of opportunities that seemed impossibly distant, he was being offered something that could transform their lives completely.
We're offering you the position of Senior Cybersecurity Architect, reporting directly to me as Chief Technology Officer. Victoria continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone making decisions that would reshape both Marcus's future and Meridian's security infrastructure. The position includes a starting salary of $180,000 annually, comprehensive healthcare benefits, educational support for your daughter, and stock options that could be worth significantly more as our company continues to grow. Marcus felt the world shift around him as he processed the implications of Victoria's offer. $180,000 represented more money than he had ever imagined earning, enough to provide Emma with the specialized medical care she needed, enough to move them out of their small apartment into a home where she could have her own room and space to grow, enough to transform their daily struggle for survival into genuine security and opportunity. Miss Chen, I don't know what to say, Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion as years of suppressed hope suddenly seemed within reach. This opportunity means more to me than you could possibly understand. Emma and I have been living paycheck to paycheck for so long that I sometimes forgot to dream about anything better. Victoria smiled, recognizing that she was witnessing a moment of genuine transformation that went far beyond corporate promotions and salary increases. Marcus, talent like yours deserves to be recognized and rewarded appropriately. But more importantly, Meridian needs someone with your innovative thinking and unconventional problem-solving abilities. You've proven that you can see solutions that others miss, and that perspective will be invaluable as we continue to face evolving cybersecurity challenges. James Park approached the conversation with a tablet displaying news coverage that was already beginning to appear about Meridian's successful response to the cyber attack. The story is spreading quickly through technology industry publications. They're calling it one of the most successful cybersecurity responses in corporate history, and they're particularly interested in the unconventional approach that led to our victory. Marcus looked at the news coverage with a mixture of pride and bewilderment, still struggling to accept that his late-night programming studies had culminated in national recognition for cybersecurity expertise. The headlines described innovative techniques and breakthrough strategies, but Marcus knew that his success had come from years of patient learning, combined with the desperate determination of someone who had everything to lose. "There's something else," Victoria added, producing additional documents from her folder. "The company's board of directors has approved a special innovation bonus of $50,000, recognizing that your intervention saved us from paying a $50 million ransom and prevented incalculable damage to our reputation and client relationships." Marcus stared at the bonus documentation, trying to comprehend numbers that represented more money than he had earned in the previous 2 years combined. $50,000 would eliminate every debt he had accumulated during Emma's medical treatments, provide a foundation for her college education, and give them the financial security that had seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. "Miss Chen, I accept your offer," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming emotions coursing through his system. "I'm honored by your confidence in my abilities, and I promise that you won't regret giving me this opportunity to prove myself in a professional environment." Victoria handed Marcus the employment documents along with a temporary security badge that bore his new title, Senior Cybersecurity Architect. The transformation from janitor to executive-level technology professional was now officially complete, documented in contracts and organizational charts that would reshape both his identity and his future. Dr. Martinez approached Marcus with a laptop bag and a smile that reflected genuine warmth and professional respect. "This is for you. Every cybersecurity architect needs proper equipment, and I thought you might appreciate an upgrade from that old laptop you've been using. It's loaded with all the diagnostic tools and security software you'll need for your new position." Marcus accepted the laptop bag with gratitude that went beyond the value of the computer itself. The gesture represented acceptance into a professional community that had previously seemed completely inaccessible, recognition from experienced colleagues who now considered him an equal rather than an invisible service provider. "Thank you, Dr. Martinez. This means more to me than just getting new equipment. It means being accepted as a colleague by people whose expertise I've admired from a distance for years." The operations center had transformed from a crisis command post into a celebration space where cybersecurity professionals, who had spent 2 days fighting for their company's survival, finally allowed themselves to acknowledge their extraordinary victory. But for Marcus, the celebration was tempered by the recognition that his real work was just beginning. "When do you want me to start in my new position?" Marcus asked Victoria, eager to begin the transition from his current life to the future that had suddenly become possible. Victoria consulted her calendar and smiled at the symbolism of what she was about to propose. "How about Monday morning? That gives you the weekend to process everything that's happened, to explain the changes to your daughter, and to prepare for your new responsibilities. I think Emma deserves to hear about your promotion directly from her father." Marcus thought about Emma, who would return home from school that afternoon expecting to find her father sleeping after another routine night of cleaning office buildings. Instead, she would discover that Daddy Speaks to Computers had become far more than a child's innocent observation. It had become the foundation for a transformation that would change both their lives forever.
Emma is going to be so excited, Marcus said, imagining his daughter's reaction when he explained that they would be moving to a better apartment, that her medical treatments would no longer strain their budget, and that her father had found work that challenged and rewarded his true capabilities. As the morning sun began streaming through the windows of the 45th floor operations center, Marcus Thompson looked out over the Seattle skyline, where he had spent countless nights cleaning buildings while dreaming of opportunities that seemed impossibly distant. The city looked different now, not because it had changed, but because his place within it had been fundamentally transformed. Victoria stood beside Marcus at the windows, sharing a moment of quiet satisfaction as they observed the urban landscape that would now provide the backdrop for his professional future, rather than just his survival. "Marcus, what you accomplished today will become part of Meridian's corporate legend. Years from now, when we tell new employees about our company's values and culture, we'll tell them about the night when a janitor saved us from cyber criminals and proved that talent and determination can overcome any barrier." Marcus nodded, understanding that his story would indeed become part of Meridian's corporate culture, but more importantly, it would become part of his daughter's understanding of what was possible when people refused to be limited by other people's expectations or conventional definitions of success. The crisis was over, the criminals had been defeated, and Marcus Thompson had proven that Daddy Speaks to Computers was not just a child's innocent observation, but an accurate description of abilities that could change everything when given the opportunity to flourish. The transformation was complete, but the real adventure was just beginning. 3 months had passed since Marcus Thompson traded his cleaning cart for a corner office on the 43rd floor of Meridian Technologies, but every morning still felt like stepping into someone else's life. The mahogany desk, dual monitor setup and ergonomic chair seemed to belong to a different person entirely, someone who had followed a conventional path through computer science programs and corporate internships, rather than teaching himself programming in employee break rooms during the quiet hours before dawn. Emma bounced excitedly in the passenger seat of their new Honda Accord as Marcus navigated through the tree-lined streets of their new neighborhood in Bellevue. The transition from their cramped downtown apartment to a 3-bedroom house with a backyard had been Emma's favorite part of their transformed circumstances, though she remained fascinated by her father's sudden emergence as what she called the computer hero guy. "Tell me again about the bad guys trying to steal the company's secrets," Emma requested, her 9-year-old imagination still captivated by the dramatic story of her father's overnight transformation from janitor to cybersecurity executive. She had heard various versions of the story from neighbors, teachers, and local news reporters who had picked up on the human interest angle of Marcus's unlikely success. Marcus smiled as he pulled into the driveway of their new home, still somewhat amazed by the sight of Emma's purple bicycle leaning against the garage door next to the basketball hoop they had installed together last weekend. The bad guys thought they were very clever, but they didn't know that sometimes the most important person in a building is the one everyone thinks is invisible. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and grabbed her school backpack, which now contained an iPad and educational software that her father's new salary made easily affordable. Her medical appointments had become routine healthcare visits rather than financial crises, and her specialized therapy sessions were now covered by Meridian's comprehensive insurance package. "Are you going to catch more bad guys today?" Emma asked as they walked toward the front door of their house, past the small garden where they had planted vegetables together as a weekend project. Marcus unlocked the door and helped Emma organize her school materials for the day. "Today I'm working on building better security systems so the bad guys can't get into any companies in the first place. It's like building stronger locks for all the doors." Emma nodded seriously, understanding that her father's work had evolved from responding to crises to preventing them entirely. She had observed enough of his late-night programming sessions to recognize that he approached computer problems like puzzles that required patience, creativity, and persistence to solve. After Emma left for school in the specialized transportation van that was another benefit of their improved circumstances, Marcus drove downtown to Meridian Technologies, where his transformation from invisible maintenance worker to respected executive continued to generate occasional double takes from employees who remembered seeing him empty their trash bins just months earlier. The 43rd floor had been reconfigured to accommodate Marcus's new cybersecurity division, which had grown from a theoretical position into a team of 12 specialists recruited from leading technology companies across the country. Dr. Rebecca Martinez had accepted a promotion to Deputy Director of Cybersecurity, working alongside Marcus to develop innovative approaches to network security that combined conventional expertise with the unconventional thinking that had made their initial collaboration so successful. Morning briefing in 10 minutes, Rebecca announced as Marcus arrived at his office, where floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. The office still felt surreal to Marcus, particularly when he remembered the years he had spent looking up at these same windows from the street below while walking to his night shift cleaning job. Marcus reviewed the security reports that had been compiled overnight by his team's monitoring systems, which now protected not only Meridian's internal infrastructure, but also provided cybersecurity services to dozens of client companies throughout the Pacific Northwest. The success of Marcus's innovative approach to network security had generated significant demand for Meridian's consulting services, transforming his division into one of the company's most profitable business units. The morning briefing brought together cybersecurity specialists, network engineers, and client relationship managers who gathered in the conference room adjacent to Marcus's office. These daily meetings had become collaborative sessions where experienced professionals and innovative thinkers worked together to address emerging threats and develop proactive security solutions. We've identified several new attack vectors that criminals are using to exploit remote work vulnerabilities, reported Jennifer Walsh, a cybersecurity analyst who had joined Marcus's team from a prestigious consulting firm in Silicon Valley. Small businesses that shifted to distributed workforces during the pandemic often lacked the resources to implement enterprise-level security protocols. Marcus studied the attack patterns that Jennifer was describing, recognizing similarities to the techniques that had been used against Meridian months earlier. These attacks succeed because they exploit the gap between sophisticated threats and limited defensive resources. What if we developed a security package specifically designed for small businesses, something that provides enterprise-level protection at a scale they can afford? Rebecca Martinez leaned forward with interest, understanding that Marcus was proposing another unconventional solution to a widespread problem that could represent a significant market opportunity. There are thousands of small businesses throughout the region that need better cybersecurity, but can't afford traditional consulting services. Marcus began sketching concepts on the conference room whiteboard, drawing on his experience with resource constraints and creative problem-solving to develop frameworks for affordable cybersecurity solutions. His approach combined automated monitoring systems with human expertise, providing small businesses with access to sophisticated protection without requiring full-time cybersecurity staff. We could launch a pilot program with 20 local businesses, Marcus suggested, his enthusiasm building as the concept developed. Restaurants, law offices, medical practices, retail stores, companies that handle sensitive customer data, but operate on tight budgets that make traditional cybersecurity services prohibitively expensive. The team spent the remainder of the morning developing implementation strategies for Marcus's small business cybersecurity initiative, which represented exactly the kind of innovative thinking that had convinced Victoria Chen to create his position in the first place.
Rather than simply responding to existing market demands, Marcus consistently identified unmet needs and developed creative solutions that generated new business opportunities. Victoria Chen arrived at the conference room just as the meeting was concluding, carrying a tablet that displayed financial reports showing the remarkable performance of Marcus's cybersecurity division during its first quarter of operation. The combination of client consulting revenues, government contracts, and licensing fees for Marcus's security innovations had exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Impressive results, Victoria announced, addressing the assembled team while focusing particular attention on Marcus. The board of directors received our quarterly report yesterday, and they're unanimously supportive of expanding the cybersecurity division's scope and budget. Marcus, they want to discuss your proposal for the Regional Cybersecurity Training Center at next week's strategic planning meeting. Marcus felt a familiar surge of excitement at the mention of his training center proposal, which represented his most ambitious vision for leveraging Meridian's success to address broader cybersecurity challenges throughout the Pacific Northwest. The center would provide advanced training for cybersecurity professionals, while also offering educational programs for students from backgrounds similar to his own, individuals whose potential might be overlooked by traditional academic and corporate recruitment systems. The training center could become a model for developing cybersecurity talent in unconventional ways, Marcus explained to Victoria as the other team members returned to their workstations. We know that some of the most innovative thinking comes from people who approach problems from different perspectives, people who might not have traditional credentials, but possess the creativity and determination necessary for solving complex technical challenges. Victoria nodded, recognizing that Marcus's training center concept reflected both his personal experience and his professional understanding of talent development. The board is particularly interested in the community outreach components of your proposal. They see an opportunity for Meridian to become a leader in diversifying the cybersecurity workforce while also strengthening our regional talent pipeline. Marcus spent the afternoon refining his training center proposal, drawing on educational research and workforce development data to support his vision of cybersecurity education that prioritized practical skills and creative problem-solving over conventional academic credentials. The center would partner with community colleges, workforce development programs, and local businesses to identify and nurture cybersecurity talent in communities that were traditionally underrepresented in technology careers. As the workday concluded, Marcus gathered his materials and prepared for the evening routine that had become one of his favorite parts of their transformed life. Instead of beginning a night shift that would keep him away from Emma until the next morning, he would drive home to help with homework, prepare dinner together, and spend quality time that had been impossible when their survival depended on his working multiple jobs with conflicting schedules. Emma was waiting in their kitchen when Marcus arrived home, her school materials spread across the dining table, alongside art supplies that reflected her growing interest in digital design. She had been experimenting with programming concepts that Marcus had introduced during their evening conversations, developing simple applications that combined her artistic creativity with basic coding skills. "I made a program that draws pictures when you type different words," Emma announced proudly, showing Marcus her latest project on the tablet computer that had become her preferred tool for exploring the intersection of technology and art. "Watch what happens when I type butterfly or rainbow or dragon." Marcus examined Emma's work with genuine admiration, recognizing that her intuitive approach to programming reflected the same kind of creative thinking that had enabled his own success in cybersecurity. "This is really impressive, Emma. You're learning to make computers do exactly what you want them to do, which is the most important skill in programming." They spent the evening working together on a more complex version of Emma's drawing program, with Marcus providing technical guidance while Emma contributed creative vision and user interface design. Their collaboration had become a regular ritual that strengthened their relationship while also nurturing Emma's growing interest in technology careers. "Dad, will I be able to work with computers like you do when I grow up?" Emma asked as they debugged a particularly challenging section of code that controlled color patterns in her digital art application. Marcus considered his daughter's question carefully, understanding that his response would influence her perception of what was possible for her future. Emma, you can work with computers in any way that interests you. You can create art, solve problems, build games, help businesses, or invent completely new things that nobody has thought of yet. The most important thing is learning to think creatively and never giving up when problems seem difficult to solve. Emma nodded thoughtfully, then returned her attention to the code they were developing together. Marcus watched his daughter work with the same focused concentration that had characterized his own late-night programming sessions, recognizing that she was developing not just technical skills, but also the persistence and analytical thinking that would serve her well regardless of whatever career path she eventually chose. The following week brought Marcus's presentation to Meridian's board of directors, where he would propose the regional cybersecurity training center that represented his vision for expanding access to technology careers throughout the Pacific Northwest. The presentation would determine whether his most ambitious project would receive the funding and institutional support necessary for implementation. Marcus entered the executive boardroom wearing a tailored suit that still felt somewhat foreign despite months of wearing professional attire. The mahogany conference table was surrounded by directors whose names appeared on Seattle's most prestigious business and philanthropic organizations, individuals whose decisions influenced regional economic development and community investment priorities. Victoria Chen introduced Marcus to the assembled directors with a summary of his remarkable journey from janitor to cybersecurity executive, emphasizing both his technical achievements and his innovative approach to solving complex problems. The story had become part of Meridian's corporate mythology, but it also served as compelling evidence for the untapped potential that existed in unconventional talent sources. Mr. Thompson's success demonstrates that exceptional capability can emerge from unexpected backgrounds, Victoria explained to the board members. His proposal for a regional cybersecurity training center reflects both his personal experience and his professional understanding of how we can identify and develop talent more effectively throughout our community. Marcus presented his training center concept with the same systematic approach that he applied to cybersecurity challenges, outlining educational frameworks, community partnerships, and workforce development strategies that would create pathways into technology careers for individuals from diverse backgrounds. The center would combine practical skills training with mentorship programs, providing both technical education and professional development support. The cybersecurity industry faces a critical talent shortage that traditional educational institutions are not addressing effectively, Marcus explained to the attentive board members. By creating alternative pathways that prioritize problem-solving ability and creative thinking over conventional credentials, we can develop a more diverse and innovative workforce while also strengthening our regional technology ecosystem. The board members asked detailed questions about implementation timelines, partnership agreements, and performance metrics, demonstrating genuine interest in Marcus's proposal while also exercising appropriate due diligence regarding the substantial investment that the training center would require. Marcus responded to their concerns with comprehensive analysis and concrete examples drawn from successful workforce development programs in other regions. The training center represents an opportunity for Meridian to become a leader in both cybersecurity innovation and community development, Marcus concluded his presentation. We can create a model that other regions can replicate, demonstrating that effective talent development requires looking beyond traditional sources and investing in people whose potential might otherwise be overlooked. The board voted unanimously to approve funding for Marcus's training center, along with authorization to begin developing partnerships with educational institutions and community organizations throughout the Pacific Northwest. The project would become Meridian's flagship community investment initiative, reflecting the company's commitment to both business success and social responsibility. As Marcus left the boardroom with approval for his most ambitious project, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him from emptying trash bins to presenting strategic initiatives to corporate directors. The transformation seemed almost surreal, but it also felt like the natural result of years spent developing skills and capabilities that had simply been waiting for the right opportunity to flourish.
6 months later, Marcus stood before the first graduating class of the Pacific Northwest Cybersecurity Training Center, looking out at 30 individuals whose backgrounds reflected the diversity that he had envisioned when developing the program. Former restaurant workers, retail employees, veterans, and career changers had completed intensive training that prepared them for entry-level positions at technology companies throughout the region. Emma sat in the front row of the auditorium, now 10 years old and serving as the unofficial mascot for the training center's youth outreach programs. She had become fascinated by the stories of adult students who were transforming their careers through technology education, understanding that her father's journey from janitor to executive was part of a larger pattern of people discovering and developing hidden potential. 18 months ago, I was cleaning office buildings at night while teaching myself programming during my breaks. Marcus told the assembled graduates, their families, and community supporters who had gathered to celebrate the training center's inaugural commencement ceremony. I thought that my background disqualified me from technology careers, that expertise belonged only to people with formal credentials and traditional educational experiences. Marcus paused, looking out at the diverse audience that represented exactly the kind of community engagement he had hoped to achieve through the training center. What I learned is that talent exists everywhere, but opportunity is often limited by assumptions about who belongs in technology careers. This training center exists to eliminate those assumptions and create pathways for anyone who possesses the curiosity, determination, and creative thinking that technology challenges require. The graduates represented success stories that validated Marcus's approach to cybersecurity education. Single parents had developed skills that enabled career transitions into well-paying technology positions. Veterans had translated military experience into cybersecurity expertise. Career changers had discovered passions and capabilities that had been dormant for years. After the commencement ceremony, Marcus and Emma walked through the training center's facilities, observing evening classes where the next cohort of students worked on programming projects and cybersecurity simulations. The center had become a hub of community activity, offering not just formal training programs but also workshops, networking events, and mentorship opportunities that strengthened the regional technology ecosystem. Dad, do you think some of these students will become famous computer experts like you? Emma asked as they watched adult learners collaborate on a complex network security project. Marcus smiled at his daughter's characterization of him as a famous computer expert, understanding that her perspective on his success reflected both pride and the natural way children processed extraordinary changes in their family circumstances. Emma, I think some of these students will become much more successful than I am. They'll solve problems that I can't even imagine, create technologies that don't exist yet, and help other people discover their own hidden potential. Emma nodded seriously, then asked the question that had been developing in her mind throughout the evening ceremony. When I grow up, will I be able to help people learn about computers like you do? Marcus knelt down to Emma's eye level, recognizing that her question represented both curiosity about her own future and understanding of the impact that education and opportunity could have on people's lives. Emma, you can help people in any way that feels meaningful to you. Whether that's through computers, art, medicine, teaching, or something completely different that you invent yourself. As they drove home through the Seattle evening, Marcus reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred not just in his own life, but in the lives of countless individuals who had been touched by the training center's programs. Emma fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window as streetlights created patterns of light and shadow across her peaceful expression. Marcus understood that his story had become part of a larger narrative about potential, opportunity, and the importance of looking beyond conventional expectations when evaluating human capability. The scared janitor who had hesitantly approached Victoria Chen with a technical analysis had evolved into someone whose influence extended far beyond cybersecurity solutions to encompass community development and educational innovation. Their house appeared ahead, with warm lights visible through the windows that Emma had decorated with artwork celebrating both her father's achievements and her own growing interests in technology and design. Marcus pulled into the driveway and gently woke Emma, helping her gather her school materials and art supplies for another evening of homework, creative projects and conversations about possibilities that seemed unlimited in their transformed circumstances. Daddy Speaks to Computers had indeed proven to be an accurate description of abilities that changed everything when given the opportunity to flourish. But more importantly, it had become the foundation for helping others discover that they too possessed capabilities that could transform their lives and communities when supported by education, opportunity, and the belief that talent exists in the most unexpected places. The story continued, but now it included dozens of graduates whose own journeys from uncertainty to success proved that Marcus Thompson's transformation was not an isolated miracle, but rather an example of what becomes possible when society creates pathways for hidden potential to emerge and thrive. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.